Good morning everyone, my name is Crystal and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you like my videos, please smash that like button, please do subscribe. It's Friday morning here in Rochester, Kent. It's been raining so the ground is wet. I'm here in my flat and yeah, good morning. Alexa, good morning.
Good morning. On this day in 1979, Trevor Francis became Britain's first £1 million footballer. He was bought by Nottingham Forest from Birmingham City. Forest's manager, Brian Clough, tried to claim the fee was actually £999,999, but after expenses and taxes, the final bill was closer to £2 million.
Alexa, what's the time please?
Good morning, Crystal. It's 8:23 a.m.
Alexa, what's the date today?
Today is Friday the 9th of February.
Alexa, what's the weather like?
In Rochester, it's 10 degrees Celsius with cloudy skies. Today, you can expect showers, with a high of 12 degrees and a low of 7 degrees.
Alexa, can you tell me a joke?
What's Forrest Gump's email password? 1Forrest1.
Alexa, whose birthday is it today?
Today's famous birthdays include American actor Michael B. Jordan, American singer and songwriter Carole King, British actor, producer and musical performer Tom Hiddleston, American actor, comedian and musician Joe Pesci, and American actress, singer, humanitarian and former fashion model Mia Farrow.
So happy birthday to anybody whose birthday is today, famous or non-famous. Because everybody matters, don't they? Not just one person, everybody matters. Right, so here I am in my flat. Yesterday I went to the dentist and yeah, pretty much as I expected it to be. I've had worse, a lot worse, especially when I've had teeth pulled out and I've had to wait while they do another patient while I've been sat outside, so I've had worse. But I refuse to lose my temper anymore, because that's not how someone that's how I personally don't want to behave. So last night I took Max out for a walk. I came back, I was tired, I was a bit fed up. It gets monotonous in here, especially at night when you're by yourself. Although I do have a wonderful dog, Max, and Harry is a mischievous kitten, and he darts up and down, jumps up everywhere, and he keeps me busy because he is messy. He's messy. He tips everything upside down, he tips the water bowls over, and he's not satisfied till he's tipped something over. When he's tipped it over, he goes and looks for something else to tip over. So the amount of times I've had to pick up water off the floor, because Max has a separate water bowl, obviously, to the cats, and the cat will knock Max's water bowl over, and it's important that pets as well as humans get water to drink. So I came back in last night and I just messed about on my phone. I couldn't get into the television at all. I didn't feel like watching the telly. A lot of the time there's A&E things and police, and you know, I think that the television's gone really downhill lately. It's really, really crap. When I went out to Chatham yesterday, things have gone down. There's, inside the Pentagon Centre, obviously Wilkinson has shut down. and I hadn't been out to town since it shut down, so Wilkinson took up a massive space in the Pentagon Centre, and that's empty. It just looks gloomy and depressing everywhere. It does. So I'm just going to see what the news is today. Alexa, news.
Here's the news. In Sky News streams.
From the Sky News Centre at 8. Joe Biden has given a surprise press conference to defend his memory after claims he'd forgotten key dates, including when his son died and when he was vice president. A report by a Republican-led committee also cleared the US president of criminal charges over his handling of classified documents several years ago. Our US correspondent Mark Stone says although the 81-year-old's regular medicals show no concerns, it is still a worry.
The thing to watch now is how his own side reacts. They cannot ignore this. The thing is, though, there is no mechanism in America at this stage in an election campaign to switch candidates. He wants to run. He's the candidate on the ballot in the primaries, which are already underway.
The Russian president has used his first interview with a Western journalist since his war in Ukraine began to suggest the country sits down for talks. Vladimir Putin told US reporter Tucker Carlson that Russia has no interest in expanding its conflict to neighbouring countries. He was also asked about the possible release of the US reporter Evan Gershkovich from a jail in Russia.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them. I also want him to return to his homeland at last. I'm absolutely sincere.
His claimed violence against prison officers has soared since the pandemic, with 23 attacks a day recorded last year across England and Wales. The report has warned major reforms needed to stop it getting worse. Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill will be going to a police graduation ceremony today. It's the first time Sinn Féin has accepted such an invitation in the force's 23-year history. The price of cocoa has continued to hit record highs because of supply problems. Dry weather is affecting crops in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. And football's world governing body says reports of so-called blue cards being used at elite level are premature. We'll get details of a trial later. That's the latest. I'm Simon English.
Now you're up to date, let's take a look at some of today's stories in more detail. Joe Biden's fighting to convince voters he's fit to run for office.
Right, guys, that's the news. So obviously it'd be interesting to know, and I think everybody is. What's happened to Kate Middleton? Is Kate Middleton okay? And is Charles's cancer, a serious cancer? Is it something that the country should be worried about, because he is our King of England, isn't he? Is it, is it serious? We don't seem to be getting very much information, do we, about what's happening with Kate Middleton or Charles, and it is, they are to do with our country. Charles is the King of England. What is going on? And Williams now seems to be taking charge of a lot of events, doesn't he, William? And he's been doing it with a smile on his face, even though his dad is seriously ill, and his wife, so he's keeping everything together, so that's good. But it would be nice to know, is Kate, I haven't seen Kate since she suddenly we got told that she was in hospital with a planned abdominal operation. So the country is in a mess, and it's just depressing. It's really depressing how many shops are closing down in town centres now, and how much obviously people are struggling to pay for just ordinary shopping items, and now shops are resorting to taking down the self-service checkouts because people are stealing, they are thieving because they can't afford to buy shopping. People are stealing. And what is happening now, which I read in a newspaper yesterday, is that the police aren't coming out to shop thefts. The police are not coming out to thieving. So the shop staff are having to let thieves go, shoplifters go. So shops are resorting to their own methods to stop shop theft. And some shops are resorting to going back to cashier service rather than self-service checkouts. That's what I saw in town in Chatham yesterday. There was a lot of shoplifting going on. And obviously shops are, if people keep stealing the stock, they're not going to make any profits, and this is why shops will end up shutting down if people keep shoplifting. But the police, there are no police. The police seem to be letting the criminals rule the streets. The criminals are ruling the streets, the alcoholics, the drug dealers, thugs are ruling the streets. You take potluck when you go outside. It's scary out there. Scary. There is no policing whatsoever. There's no security. I walked into the Pentagon Centre, Chatham, yesterday. They were smoking weed inside the Pentagon Centre, smoking drugs. The security staff were not doing their job properly. They were just sat there like that, laughing and giggling with each other. That there's old people in this country, and there's ill people and disabled, and you've got people going in and out of the Pentagon Centre with those electric scooters. It's a terrifying place to live in the world at the moment. That's why I do not go out very much, and that is why I prefer to have my stuff delivered to my address. And when my electricity meters were changed over to pay-as-you-go ones, I'm forced to go outside and face the corruption head on when I just go and get my gas and electricity. It's a scary, scary world out there. Alexa, LBC Radio.
LBC London from Global Player.
In a way which is comprehensive and can be communicated clearly. Have changed, but they have, so you have to make a decision like this.
How confident are you the party can still reach its clean energy target by 2030?
Well, this is hugely ambitious. Obviously, this is really about where the private investment comes in, because new generating assets in terms of electricity would be in the main funded by the private sector, and the role of the government is to make that possible, to have the right mechanisms to do that. The danger on that, to be frank, is because the government auction for the last round of offshore wind, the one before that was delayed, and there's been a delay to the Hinkley nuclear power station. So it is ambitious, but I'm absolutely certain it's the right level of ambition to have, because getting gas off the system in the big way is the way to bring down energy bills for the long term.
Well, it certainly was ambitious, but with 75% less funding, is it also now unattainable?
Well, just to be clear, it's not about 75% less funding, because the majority funding in this area will come from the private sector. The policies that make that happen are things like the planning system being sorted out, changes to national grid, some public investment, yes, but you're basically, Nick, underwriting the private investment to a degree. You're bringing down the risk. There's about, at the minute as it stands today, about £200 billion worth of private investment projects in the queue for grid connections. So you're trying to enable that to happen. But I think compared to where the government is at and where the level of ambition should be for the opposition, I think that's the right policy.
Why was it necessary to attach a figure to it?
Well, I think I would accept it as a fair point that talking about the figure isn't really helpful to anyone, is it? And I think perhaps the focus on the figure is our responsibility.
Your party leader and your shadow chancellor endorsed it, Mr. Reynolds.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. I'm acknowledging that when you're talking about the figure as the level of ambition rather than what that will do, that's not the right way really to convince the public that it's the right policy. But I think where we've got to, where I can come on and talk about our National Wealth Fund, which will invest in green steel or electric vehicle battery factories, GB Energy, which will work with the private sector on some of this new, more experimental, innovative technology, where I can say, look, we still have on things like fuel poverty and warm homes, the most ambitious policy any government's ever had. That is what we should be talking about. That's what we want to talk about, and getting this policy right is a way to get towards that conversation.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the ambitions. Would you say that you and your senior Labour colleagues say that net zero would be in the top 3 major concerns for voters?
I think net zero is not just about the environment but about the economy, and I think on that score, yes, I mean it's risen massively in terms of where public interest has been, so I think it is one of the major issues, and fundamentally some of the hardest stuff we've got to do will obviously fall in the next Parliament, so getting it right is crucial.
So if it is in the top 3, why would the party now want to attach this screeching U-turn to it?
Because you can either U-turn in government or you can U-turn in opposition where the circumstances have changed. And I think it's far better to be in a position where you are being straight with people, that the circumstances, the conditions have changed. How ambitious you can be will always be affected by what you will potentially inherit. And I think being straight with people today is the right way to do that. And look, ultimately we've all got to acknowledge that how much you can spend on anything is not determined by how much you want to do that. It's about what are the conditions that underpin that. And if you look at essentially what we're saying here is spending in this area under the government at the minute is about £10 billion a year. Under us it would go to just short of £15 billion a year, so it's a substantial rise. You compare that to the costs of servicing debt interest in a era of rising interest rates. I mean, look, compared to even last year, the forecast now is we'll be spending an extra £20 billion on debt interest. It's compared to when the announcement was first made for this £28 billion, it's a huge rise in terms of what has got to be factored into the national finances. Now that's the reality. I literally can't avoid that. I've got to shape our plans in relation to that. And I think once you know that, once you can confirm that, do it in opposition. Don't wait till you've got a chance to get into government, then say, look, people, the things change with Liz Truss and it goes back to that point and we can't deliver in the same way. Just be straight with people. That is what people want, even if they would like to see a greater degree of ambition. I think they accept they want plans that are deliverable.
Well, let's see if you'll be straight with the listeners over this. Some newspaper commentators are saying this could indicate tension between relations between the shadow chancellor and the leader of the party, not seen since the tensions between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Do we have a replay with Sir Keir and Rachel Reeves?
No, genuinely not. I know that, look, the people I've shadowed and the jobs that I have done in opposition, there has been, with successive governments in the last 14 years, a lot of melodrama, people falling out with each other. The Chancellor, the Business Secretaries have broadly never got on in my time. That is not the case with us. I can genuinely say that. I spoke to all my colleagues when I got back into the country last night to see where things have been this week. And there is a team of people, of course we've got to thrash issues out, but there is a team of people united in the Labour Party that, not just across this agenda, across the whole agenda, want to be the team that turns this country around and know we've got to do that together. No one person can do it. And the relationships that underpin that are very strong.
OK, let's turn to other matters while I have the benefit of you on the line. A report in the Telegraph says Labour is planning to protect top public sector pensions than the proposed raid on pensions. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, says the paper, are planning to reimpose the 1.73 million maximum cap on the amount.
Well, we have always said when we opposed the changes the government made, there was a substantial, takeaway for top earners when they changed the pension rules in one of the previous budgets, that we didn't think that was the priority, because in a cost of living crisis, giving so much money to higher earners, I think is a contentious thing. Getting that right has to acknowledge that there are particular issues with some public sector pension schemes where you obviously wouldn't want people retiring early, even if they want to work, because they would be in a difficult position in terms of their pension. So we've always been working on an alternative to that. That's not within my brief, but it is something we've always said we will try and deliver upon.
So in the public sector, they will effectively escape the raid then, won't they? Is that right?
Well, look, I have been out of the country this week, Nick, and I don't know exactly the story you are relating that question to, so I can't give you a specific answer. Genuinely not been part of that, but we acknowledge that there have been no particular issues with doctors, to be frank, in terms of the decision the government made. They then did it for the entirety of top earners, and clearly when money is tight, you have to question whether that was the right decision. But there are difficult issues with how the tax system treats those higher earners.
Can't let you go without a final question. I'm sure you've seen the news emerge out of the United States overnight that in the view of some federal prosecutors, President Joe Biden would not be able to stand trial because he wouldn't be intellectually or mentally capable enough. I discussed this with Science Minister Andrew Griffith in the first hour, and he suggested that the President would benefit from a visit to a medical facility in Nottingham which has early diagnosis of degenerative diseases related to ageing, such as senility. How do you respond to that idea?
I would say, like every US presidential election, everyone follows it closely in the UK. But when you have so many elections taking place around the world this year, the answer from any government minister would be obviously to say the decision in those elections in foreign countries is down to the electorate in those countries, and I don't think we should get involved in any comments on some of the candidates going forward in those contests.
Well, he's of course the president. Did you detect any senility in the way he responded to those questions?
I've seen the footage, but I wouldn't want to make a statement based on that. I think we would want to know. Well, we want to be closer to the information that's relevant around there. Clips can sometimes be misleading that you see on the internet, but I can certainly say if you look at the president's record, Joe Biden's record, it is an astonishing record in terms of the growth of the economy and living standards in the US, and I wouldn't mind some of that here in the UK.
Grateful for your time. Jonathan Reynolds, the Shadow Business and Trade Secretary, saying there's still many benefits of the Green Plan, not to lose it all as the price tag is taken away. Let's come back to those comments. And the Science Minister, Andrew Griffiths, for his reaction to the story and this suggestion that perhaps the President needs to go to a centre in Nottingham.
It is always foolish for any minister, but any member of the government to comment on other countries' leadership. The US is obviously an incredibly important partner, our strongest ally. What I would say is that there are fantastic advances being made in medical science. We're all living longer, and the work that's done, I saw on Monday at Nottingham University, a fantastic spin-out company that's working on scanning brains and trying to identify the early symptoms of some of the degenerative diseases that we all face with aging. So there's not a comment on anybody, Nick, not you, me,
Well, you seem to be suggesting he needs medical help,
or any US president.
You seem to be suggesting we need to get him to Nottingham for some medical help.
I'm just saying this is a really exciting moment in medical science. I think, we can see over the next decades, real breakthroughs on things that I know, because it's touched me and my family, and it will have touched many of your listeners' families. Terrible things like dementia and some of the more degenerative diseases of aging. The work of the department and some of the missions that this government has put in place on dementia, on cancer, I think hold a great, bright hope for the future.
So that's the government's official spokesperson or spokesman today saying that the President has got some form of degenerative disease or senility. Now, this has been fueled, of course, by some of the gaffes. He confused France's President Macron with Francois Mitterrand, one of Macron's predecessors who died in 1996. On other occasions, he forgot to name the name of the terror group Hamas and called them the opposition. And just yesterday, Joe Biden managed to muddle up Egypt and Mexico. He decided that the Egyptian President Sisi was the president of Mexico while discussing the war in the Middle East.
And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for? There's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. Initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I've been pushing really hard to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza.
For the love of all that's holy, he just has to look south and Mexico is there. How did he manage to move that to the Middle East? I think we know what's going on here, don't we? Sadly, the man has to stand down. It's 8:46, LBC News headlines. Thomas Watts.
President Biden
Right, guys, I'm going off to make myself a cup of coffee. Yesterday I went to Sainsbury's and I got 2 boxes of Nescafe Irish Latte, which I love. So they don't do this in the Co-op in Rochester, and I can't find it anywhere else, so I was glad to get my Irish latte. Hope everybody has a great Friday, and I'll see you later.